Sports Yak. One host knows sports.
And who's right there?
The other doesn't know sports, but somehow they meet in the middle. Corey Mann.
Get your big butt out of here!
And Indiana Sports Broadcast Hall of Famer,
This one will be relived
Chuck Freebie.
forever!
Do you like sports? 'Cause we like sports. Let's talk about sports. It's Sports Yak. Sports Yak. It's Sports Yak.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 27 of Disney Plus Reviews. I am one of your co-hosts, Phil Souza, and I'm here with my co-host, my good friend, and the guy who voted against Order 66. He wants everyone to make sure it's known. It's Jack Altermat. What's happening, Jack?
Now more than ever, in this trying time, we needed Order 66. I almost said 67.
Oh, you were in favor of Order 66.
But not anymore.
Okay.
We're looking for Order 67.
Oh, Order 67.
We're restoring
the new
the
hotness.
Jedis. Bring the Jedis back. We want the Jedis back in our lives. And scene.
We also have a special guest on the show this week, someone I've been wanting to get on the show for a long time. Finally, we were able to get it lined up. One half of the PB&J podcast is Jake Wilburn.
Hello, everybody. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me.
Oh, I love that phrase.
Go Battlehawks.
That could be the new thing in Star Wars.
Go Battlehawks.
Yeah, I'm wearing an XFL jersey. That's
it's
what
such a sad
Jack
time
is
for
referencing.
so many things.
Yeah.
XFL.
And so sad the Clone Wars is over.
Yeah.
It is true.
And that's why we're here. We're here to discuss the end of the Clone Wars. We're reviewing specifically episodes 11 and 12. That'll be the title of the episode. But I think we're just going to talk about season 7 as a whole, probably overall, especially to get Jake's thoughts. And then I wouldn't mind just talking about Clone Wars just in general, just like the whole show, since it's the literal sunsetting of that entire show. Dave Filoni, I'm sure, has been interviewed quite a bit. I saw a couple interviews. I haven't watched anything from him, but this is a big thing, a big kind of... wrapping up of this part of his career. And obviously he's got a future career with Star Wars with Mandalorian at the very least. So he's got more to come. But Jake, before we jump into the last couple episodes, I want to kind of start with you. Since you're coming onto the show just for the first time for this season, you're actually one of the ones that there's like 2 or 3 people that really got me into Clone Wars, that like got me started on it. And then I watched, as listeners of the show know, I binged all 7 seasons basically in the course of the last few months. So I've had a lot of Star Wars on the brain. And Clone Wars is, just so you know my thoughts, Clone Wars is one of the greatest animated shows in history to me. Like it's a top 3, top 5 of all time animated show. So I absolutely love it. I waited way too long to get into it, and you obviously have gushed about it for, we've talked about it for hours probably. So what are your general thoughts on season 7, how it came to a close, what we've seen this season with the Bad Batch, with the Martez sisters, and then now this final?
Yeah, so I was a big fan of the Clone Wars series as a whole. I got into it a little bit late because I didn't have cable or Cartoon Network or anything, so I was watching Clone Wars when Netflix was like, you mail in the DVDs.
Oh, yeah.
Because I wanted all the... Nice. It hadn't gone to Netflix yet, and I also got to watch all of the behind-the-scenes stuff, and so I was watching Dave Filoni and how they were working on it, and every season it just got better and better and better and better. And then, of course, the show got canceled, and they were able to release those, few kind of lost mission episodes. I followed a little bit of the comics and kind of what happened to Darth Maul after the series had ended, and you last see him getting beat by Darth Sidious. So I watched those comics and I was like, man, I wish it would come back. Disney bought it. Still nothing happened. And then when it was like, okay, season 7 is going to happen, I was super, super stoked that they were going to be able to wrap this up. Because that's what everybody wanted to see, was how Clone Wars led up to Revenge of the Sith. And of course, what we get in the final arc of the 7th season is events running parallel to the events in Revenge of the Sith.
Really well done.
Revenge of the Sith is one of my favorite Star Wars movies. I know a lot of people poo-poo the prequels.
I think it was great.
But then what the Clone Wars series as a whole really offers is it makes the prequel movies, especially episodes 2 and 3, much more rich. Now, it kind of stinks that you almost have to watch, a 7-season show to, really appreciate, I think, what George Lucas was going for in Revenge of the Sith. But man, it makes it just so much better. And then with this arc at the Siege of Mandalore and these, last 4 episodes, there are parts that, because of course, I've watched these episodes multiple times, and then I've watched this past week Revenge of the Sith again, that you have stuff running parallel, and you'll watch a scene in Revenge of the Sith, and then it will pan away in the movie, but in the Siege of Mandalore, the scene continues, or you get more content, and I'm like, this is so great because, at some point you're like, okay, the prequels is kind of a dead era, right? You're like, Disney's not really going to do anything with that. They're focused on the sequel trilogy, and even The Mandalorian is post-Return of the Jedi. And so it's just been so rewarding. And this final arc has been some of the best Star Wars that, I've experienced since earlier seasons of the Clone Wars.
Right.
It's just so good. And, I don't want to get too deep into criticisms of the sequel trilogy, but even just this arc, this 4-episode arc, was better than all 3 of the sequel movies, in my opinion.
Right.
It was just so well done. And you were mentioning Dave Filoni. One of the things I like about Dave Filoni, and it really comes out in his interviews and then even when other people speak about him, is he really cares about the lore. And he really also kind of like, you'll hear him be like, well, this is what George would want. This is what George Lucas would do. And he just really embraced that role of, I am learning from George Lucas. Cool. If he challenges me to do something, then I'm going to do it. And you can really tell all those years of skill and learning, and of course now Disney's budget, that they've got behind them for this last scene. They treated the Siege of Mandalore arc like a big budget film.
Yeah, cool.
Just the way they did the angles, the way they did the story. You can tell that just so much care was put into this arc, and there's petitions online asking for it to be released in theaters because, and I think that would be fantastic. I would
last
go.
4 episodes.
Oh sure, yeah, for this now. I know that it would probably have to be one of those limited like they did when they released the Killing Joke for Batman. It's like you might only get a 1 or 2 night, thing, and then see if it expands from there. But
honestly,
so good.
I could change my mind on this if it actually comes out, but like just depending on the state of the world. But like, I honestly would probably go watch that.
Yeah, it would
in
be
theaters.
good.
Oh my gosh,
see it
yes.
in a big theater, like
Sure.
with that audio.
But just the fact that they brought in Ray Park, who's the original Darth Maul from Episode 1, and did the motion capture, and just so. They have put so much thought and attention to how this was going to go. And there was even a Ahsoka novel that was released that kind of told her story during and post Order 66, and they still told this story without retconning all that stuff. And it's just like, and so that just tells you the amount of attention to detail that Dave Filoni especially puts into the Clone Wars. And that's what, trust me, there are people that are way deeper Star Wars nerds than me, but I'm probably just a little bit nerdier about the lore than most normal, casual watchers. And it's just, that's what I can really respect, because when I watch some of the stuff in the sequel trilogy, I'm like, are you just making this up as you go along? I feel like you kind of are.
I think they were.
Whereas in the Clone Wars, I'm like, okay, we are solidly like respecting the universe and adding to it in a really rewarding way.
Yeah, I have so much respect for Dave Filoni, which is why, honestly, the Martez sisters, those 4 episodes, that story arc, I think really confused me, because I was hoping for what we got in the Bad Batch in these last 4 episodes with Mandalore and Maul and everything, and really leading up to Darth Vader. I thought that was going to be the whole season, and that middle story arc was such a dip. Like, it was such a valley for me, as far as like,
it was like filler. It was like this weird, like, what in a 12 episode thing, why would you It's been 4 of them doing this.
Hearing what you said about the lore and about his love for George and like how he just wants to do what George Lucas would have done and that kind of stuff, I believe all of it. Like he is a mastermind when it comes to Star Wars storytelling and how to take all these different characters and bring them into something that is not just cohesive with who they are as a character, but also all the other different events that imagine trying to keep all the timeline of everything that's ever happened in Star Wars in your brain at one time. Like to think about that book and that comic and that TV show and that movie and not write any dialogue that's going to, subvert or contradict anything.
Sure.
And he's a master at it. I mean, I agree with you. Like this, the last 4 episodes, particularly, although I really like the first 4 episodes too, have been, I think, some of the best Clone Wars that we've ever gotten.
Some of the best Star Wars that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just in period. And I wouldn't be afraid to somebody who's never watched the Clone Wars, and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to show you the Siege of Mandalore. Here's a super brief backstory about who Ahsoka Tano is, because if you've not watched the Clone Wars or Rebels, you wouldn't know. It's like, okay, Anakin's Padawan. Here's super brief, but just watch this because this is just it's so awesome. And I know we're here to talk about the last 2 episodes in the arc. Can I say something about the arc with the sisters?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the Bad Batch was basically almost completed when the Clone Wars was canceled, right? So they are like, all right, we've pretty much already got this. Let's, that's low-hanging fruit to clean up the CG and throw it out there, and it's a decent storyline. And it also kind of shows, Anakin having some, yellow-eyed moments, right, when he kills that big spider dude. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the second arc, in my opinion, if you would have, yes, they could have made different choices, but if you would have just shown Ahsoka Tano at the beginning of the Siege of Mandalore without giving her a little bit of room to breathe from the time that she left the Jedi Order, right? Because we have Rebels, so we know what happens, after the Empire rises, but we hadn't seen her since she said, okay, I'm done with the Jedi Order and I'm walking away. So I think it was a good idea to give that character a little bit of breathing room before because the Siege of Mandalore, it starts going at a good pace. Things really start happening.
Yeah.
And yes, it wasn't I did not fall in love with those 2 characters of the sisters. But it shows that Darth Maul, even after getting his butt kicked by Sidious, still has somewhat of a grip on some of the crime bosses in the universe. It gives Ahsoka Tano a chance to talk to some characters who, view the Jedi in a negative light. I mean, these are people several levels down in Coruscant, so, their class is lower, and she's like, okay, this is how other people have to live, and their parents were killed by the Jedi, and the Jedi didn't give a crap, and so it kind of just validates where her character is at by the time that it gets to the Siege of Mandalore. So it's not something I'm going to rewatch unless I'm just rewatching all of the Clone Wars again. It wasn't great, but do I think it was just totally throwaway or filler, as you said? I think it's a little more valuable than that because it does set the stage for the Siege of Mandalore. I think they could have done better because they could have literally done any other plot line. Yeah. It also, in books or whatever, it also gives Ahsoka a place to hide because Order 66 happens, and then when she leaves the sister, she's like, oh, you just hang on to the bike because I might be back, and this is like 8 levels down in the Coruscant core, so it does give her a place to hide out until she can get the rebel cells going or whatever, but...
I think where we landed on it was that I didn't mind seeing Ahsoka before the Siege of Mandalore. I did want to see... I loved seeing Ahsoka for 8 episodes. I thought we were only going to get her for like maybe a third of the season. The fact that we got her for a full 2/3 was awesome. I think where I landed is like, yes, I wanted to see kind of where she's at, where she's been all this time. I kind of want to see her as a non-Jedi, like not using her powers, except for, like in private, like sessions away from like, prying eyes and stuff like that. But I think where I landed was like, I just wanted to see her do... like almost like a Jedi without the name, on some other planet. I didn't even want it to be on Coruscant. Like I wanted to see her on some other planet in the galaxy, some unknown planet, Outer Rim, and secret becoming like being that Jedi hero, saving some race from whatever oppression is going on.
We have that thought that you and I had talked about. Oh, well, what could happen with Ahsoka now? I mean, we know she's coming back. Like, it surely won't be around anyone else we know, and it'll probably be out and away. And that's why I felt like I was disappointed whenever it was like on Coruscant in a garage.
So I think I agree with everything that you said. I think they could have accomplished all those tasks, but had a more enticing story. I think.
Sure.
But
well, and George Lucas has said Star Wars is kind of like poetry, right? Things rhyme, and there's reoccurring themes across the series. And it it is different, but in a way, you look at something like The Last Jedi, where Luke Skywalker, gets disenfranchised with all. He's like, all right, screw this, I'm going out on an island by myself. And then, through the course of certain events, realizes that, well, I can't just not help, right? And so I feel like that was a similar story arc with Ahsoka, where she rides away on her speed bike and is like, you know what, I'm just going to go find a place to hide out. She finds some sisters and she's like, all right, I'll be a mechanic and just hang out. But then, they get involved into trouble, and by the end of that arc, she realizes, I am not the type of person, like, I want to help people. I can't, even though I'm not a Jedi anymore and I don't really want to be, I see what's wrong with the Order, same like Luke did in The Last Jedi. I can't not help when people need my help.
Right.
And so the Mandalorians, come to her and are like, hey, can you do this? Because we can't really ask the Republic for help. We can't really ask the Jedi directly for help. We need somebody who's kind of in between. And that, by that point in the arc, she's like, well, because I feel like if they would have come to her
initially,
she's speeding off out of the speed bike. The storyline with the sisters never happens, and the Mandalorians just fly in and go, "Come to Mandalore and help us." She would have been like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that. Yeah, I'm not done.
That part
with
of my life is done."
Sure.
Yeah.
So again, it could have been.
It needed
a better
something
arc,
to tie
but,
it together. I feel like, though, for me, I'm just me. We all have opinions. So, like, for me, if they could have just taken her from, hey, help, my sister is in a drug deal gone bad. Right. Can you help me? I know you from the previous episodes of this show. Never mind.
I just don't think the sisters were likable characters.
No, and I felt like the voice acting was really weird. Like, the voice acting at times took me so far out of the character where, like, the one of them, the older one, was like reading it off of like the script. Like, it was really weird. Like, it was very broken up. Like, the sentences were fragmented at times. I'm like, what am I missing here?
I think for me, the overall, because there were things I liked about it, and you literally touched on everything that I liked about it. There are things to like. But for me, I think as far as the dialogue goes, and I keep coming back to the dialogue of those episodes, it is literally the same tension of like, hey, you're just here to use my sister, or, hey, you need to back off and, let your sister not become part of this crime family or whatever, this crime thing that you have going on. Like, it was literally the same tension in episode 5 as episode 6 as episode 7.
Oh, the arc could have been better.
8.
There's no doubt.
Like, it was literally the same story 4 times.
And the prison life, and the prison life episode where they start in prison and end in prison. Like, I was like,
and if we can,
what was that? Like,
if we saw anything from episodes 1 through 4 and episodes 9 through 12, is that they can do a 4-episode story arc and have like 3 different sections of tension. Like, there's tension 1, there's tension 2, there's tension 3 over the course of 4 episodes. We didn't get that through 5 through 8. Like, it was literally the same plot for all 4 episodes.
I mean, here's the thing. It felt like Clone Wars, right? And
it was.
And that
Absolutely.
arc could have basically been under just, slightly different story tweaks. Could have been in any other season. It didn't feel out of place.
And in a 24-episode season.
Yes, but when you're looking at like...
Learn 4 on that. Who cares? It's
right,
fine.
so but you're looking at 12 episodes of something that you've resurrected. There's only so much real estate, so how wise are you going to be with what few episodes you have?
Yeah.
And, sure, that they could have made different and better choices, for sure.
I think they could have done it in... This is maybe not popular with everyone that's listening, but I think they could have done it in a single episode. I think like just episode 5 could have been the whole
1 or
Montez.
2 episodes. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did stretch it out a little bit long, but man, the final payoff with the Siege of Mandalore, I mean, it's almost like I almost forgot that those episodes happened, just because the Siege of Mandalore was just so epic that it's like, okay, I don't really care like about all that. I just don't like it didn't. The 7th season was for that arc, was for the last 4 episodes.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
for sure.
Do you want to talk about the Siege a little bit? Because episodes 9 and 10 we've already covered, but we haven't got your thoughts on it. So what stands out to you about those episodes? Obviously, Maul is a big part of it.
Yeah, I think it was smart to, the Siege of Mandalore has been referenced in, Star Wars lore before, but never really, shown the circumstances around it. Using Mandalore was also just smart from a marketing standpoint because people really like the Mandalorian show, and just even before that, Boba Fett's been a popular character, and so it was smart to tie it into Mandalore. I also like Darth Maul, and I've liked his arc. It stinks that he got his little part in episode 1, and everything else has been tied between, cartoons and comics and whatever. So the fact that Darth Maul is involved, Ahsoka Tano is involved, Mandalorians are involved. Like all of these things are tied. The fall of Anakin Skywalker there's just so much that you love about Star Wars that's all happening, like, in a big condensed ball of action, right? And and even the stuff with the clones. And one of the things I've liked about the Clone Wars is that it humanized them and kind of shown, and they talk about it during the arc where it's like Ahsoka's going the Jedi were supposed to be peacekeepers, but all I've ever been is a soldier. And Rex is like, well, if it wasn't for this war, I wouldn't even exist. Like we want this war to end, but like it's why I was created. So I've really liked that element. And then of course when Order 66 happens, which I always thought in Revenge of the Sith it was kind of rushed, like the last fourth of Revenge of the Sith, where once Anakin's like, all right, I submit to you, it's like you're watching everything in fast forward. I mean, it just happens so quickly. Yeah. And I felt like with this expanding on the story, it really helped that. And then that moment where Rex and Ahsoka are talking, and this is in the second to last episode, and and they're kind of talking about the war and just their relationship, and they've captured Maul, and it kind of looks like everything's on the downslide. And then she feels Anakin, and you get the voiceovers, which it was Matt Lantern, I think that's how you say his last name, I think, doing the lines that Hayden Christensen did in Return of the Jedi, and Ahsoka feels like, oh crap, like what's going on with Anakin, but she still can't believe it, right? Maul tried to tell her basically Anakin was going to turn to the dark side. It's like, you lie, So, and then, so then they go, oh yeah, I'm going to go to this briefing. And she's like, nah, you go. It's probably more good news because things are going so well. And Grievous is dead. Dooku's dead. But we know, and the first 2 episodes, Order 66 is just hanging like this dark cloud, right? Like you don't know where in the arc it's going to happen, right? But Maul knows it, you know it, and it's just this tension of like, oh, dude, like it's gonna, and I mean, I haven't been that in a good way, stressed out, like feeling that tension of just when it's gonna happen.
Like you said earlier, I wasn't sure we were even gonna get Order 66 I thought maybe this would just lead right up to the events. Yeah. But like you said, it happens in tandem. It's simultaneous to the events of Revenge of the Sith, which I also recently rewatched. I watched it a few weeks ago. And the fact that we got to, and we talked about, Jack and I talked about this on our 2 weeks ago episode of the fact that we are getting the supercut. So a fan out there right now, 10 fans out there right now are making a supercut of the Clone Wars season 7, these 4 episodes, and Revenge of the Sith. Right. So you can just watch everything in a 4-hour.
Yeah.
But how bummed would you have been had they not done Order 66 on screen, and it been like they end with Ahsoka with oh, Rex, you clones have always got our back. And then we walk off into the sunset.
I would not have been satisfied with that.
And I was
no.
Mad.
I knew by when I watched the second episode, I'm like, okay, Order 66 is going to happen on screen.
Yeah.
And when it finally does, and you can see Rex, he's shaking his helmet and he drops it. And he has those last few seconds where he's resisting and tells her to look up Fives, who in a prior season had kind of discovered the chip and everybody thought he was crazy. And so I thought that was, it's a good payoff for people who have actually watched, the show and were paying attention to it and stuff. And
when you first said fives, find fives, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is going to get crazy, because I remember everything that we'd been talking about from season 6 and how Fives had done all that, and basically you could see the internal struggle, even though he's got his helmet on, the internal struggle of I have to kill you, but at the same time I want you to live. You can see the transition happening in real time, and then him saying hey, the only way that we're going to get out of this, or any of us is going to get out of this, and avoid the tragedy of Order 66 is Fives. We have to get that data and figure out what is going on. And to watch Ahsoka go through because she was not present for anything. That was all season 6. She was gone. Like she's literally figuring this out for the first time.
Right.
And like to see her, in her eyes, that all the animation is so perfect, but like just the revelation of like this has been long. Like she's rattling through like years of information in about 30 seconds and is figuring out that no, this was always the plan from the very beginning, that Palpatine has been behind this whole thing, and this got programmed years ago, and this has always been the plan from the very beginning, and we're just now watching it.
Yeah.
So like to use Ahsoka as the centerpiece for all of this revelation was perfect.
The other thing is like the use of Darth Maul, the way they used him. I mean, one, he's giving information about Anakin.
Yep.
He's giving information about this whole plot. He's then showing like emotion of him being used the way he was used, because that's how he feels. Yeah. And that's what drives him every day to basically kill the Emperor at some point down the road. And then Ahsoka uses him as a distraction, as a diversion.
Yeah, and that scene, by the way,
It's smart.
I really liked it, where she goes and makes the decision to free Darth Maul, which of course has major consequences through, the rest of his life. But she goes and frees him, and he's like, "Oh, sweet, let's team up. I knew you. I knew that this is what would happen." Good. And she's like, no, that's not why I'm here. Like, I hope you die. Go. And he's like, "Aren't you even gonna give me, a fighting chance? Like, hey, can you give me a lightsaber?" And she's like, "No, I don't want you to live. Like, I'm not rooting for you, dude. I literally am doing this out of absolute necessity." And then his hallway scene, similar to the scene in Rogue One,
was unbelievable.
Yes, and it was so violent.
We just talked about We just talked about Rogue One on last week's episode. The last episode of our show was all about Rogue One, and we talked about that scene for a good 3 or 4 minutes, and it took me right back to that scene when I saw that.
Yeah.
When he just mow through dudes. Like,
he's
awesome.
just mowing through clones and like decapitating them. And it was
honestly,
awesome.
it was really violent. Now that I think
it was and that guy's arm gets cut off.
Yep.
He steals his little communicator device. But the Maul stuff was, and then of course in the following episode, in the final episode where he destroys the hyperdrive room.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have either of you ever played the Force Unleashed games?
I have.
It reminded me a lot of the powers that Starkiller had in that game, where he's just like, taking these humongous stuff and just, crushing it. Yeah. But seeing Maul's, it really displayed a lot of Maul's power, because a lot of Maul stuff you see in his acrobatics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course he can force choke and stuff, but this really kind of expanded on like, wow, okay, Maul is a pretty powerful dark side user.
He's on, and he in the previous episodes he kind of was talking about how he always wanted to be that Vader character for Palpatine. Like, he was originally his apprentice, and then it got cast away and all that kind of stuff. And so like, and he always believed that he could, had he not been cast out, he could have actually fulfilled all the duties necessary to be that role. And in this episode, I was like, he absolutely could have. Like, he's Vader, like, as far as his powers. So
he's even more agile than Vader.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, and I don't know how much down this rabbit trail of Vader versus Maul you want to go, but Maul is too. He's more of like a Sith assassin. It's like he can definitely go and like kill people.
Yeah.
But he's not. Vader is at least a little more focused and calculated, and like thinks things through. Whereas Maul is just more like rage and is angered easily. But anyway,
I agree. I think that's why it makes more sense for him to be like a super crime lord than it does.
But
right. Yes.
Two things. I'll
eat that mic a little bit.
Maul is less hampered by, having his arms cut off and then himself burnt to death almost, like Vader is. And then one word though that evens it out for Vader: midichlorians.
Well, no, I mean, okay, if we're going to go into, let's go a little deeper into lore, if that's okay, Phil.
I believe one-on-one, I think Maul would beat Vader.
No.
Oh, I don't know about that.
No way. Okay, so yes, midichlorians. Yes.
Continue.
Hold on.
All right, go ahead. And go ahead, guys.
Yes, you do have midichlorians. So a little bit of background on Vader's suit, okay?
Yeah, okay.
Vader's suit was obsolete before it even got put on him, okay? So the suit that Vader wears is intentionally uncomfortable. Like, there are other, if Palpatine really wanted to, he could take more measures to try to heal Vader or give him a suit that would be like more comfortable. but Palpatine issues Anakin that suit because every time he feels how uncomfortable it is and how much it just gives him rage and makes him think about his failure, makes him think about how much he hates Obi-Wan and how, that day in Mustafar. That's also why his castle is in Mustafar. In Rogue One, you see, his big thing, whatever, to remind him of his failures there and to fuel his rage and therefore increase his dark side power. So it's kind of like the Michael Keaton Batman suit where he can't turn his head, so it does limit him, in certain ways, but that is intentional because it makes him just more rely on his force powers rather than anything that his body can do. So that's just a little more lore there about Vader's suit. Also, it looks intimidating.
Yeah, that has to explain. You have to explain away why Anakin is so athletic and agile and just like flipping around dudes and stuff like that. And then you see him in the original trilogy 4, 5, 6, and he's just like walking slowly down hallways and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's the suit.
Yeah,
because even Darth Maul with his robot legs can still do a bicycle kick.
Right.
Yeah. So that it's by at least how the lore explains it, forgetting the fact that the original trilogy was made first and then all this was added in later.
Right.
In real life, that's the real reason,
Right.
But because we want,
but you got to flesh out the story and the lore and everything else. Yeah.
So anyway, that's the
I would
story
love to
about
see
Vader's
it.
suit.
We'll never get it probably, but like a Vader Maul fight would be awesome because it would honestly feel a little bit like a Yoda Vader fight. Like Yoda is obviously not very intimidating as far as his size, but is incredibly difficult to battle as we saw like in the prequel trilogies with Dooku and stuff like that. It's like just flipping around.
His agility is high, but he also
and his force abilities.
His force abilities
to reflect things and to throw things and stuff like that. So I think it would look a lot like that. I think.
So back to the Siege of Mandalore. If the Clone Wars has a main character, it's Ahsoka Tano, right? Of course, it goes all over the universe and focuses on all kinds of different characters.
I think Anakin's a big part too, but
sure.
Ahsoka has been the hero of the story. I think.
Yes. So the fact that it was centered around where Ahsoka was during Order 66 and how all that was handled, and that she was able to save at least one of the clone troopers, and it was just so well done. So well done. All the great characters were in the right place. And then in these final 2 episodes, it opens up where she has just, taken the chip out of Rex. The other clones are trying to break through the door. And it's basically 2 episodes of how the heck do we get out of here alive? And, of course, there's some good conversations between the two of them, but man, the tension of like, okay, I know Ahsoka's gonna live. I know she's gonna live because she's in Rebels. I know Rex is gonna live. And so I was a little worried going in that I wouldn't feel that tension because it's almost like watching Revenge of the Sith. You're like, well, I know he turns into Darth Vader, so what am I here for?
Yeah.
So that's really hard to execute when you know the ending.
Right.
But on that Revenge of the Sith, for me, that's why I wanted to watch it. Like the big payoff, even as bad as Phantom Menace was, and Attack of the Clones wasn't a very good movie either, in my opinion. But I knew the payoff will be we're going to see Vader. We're going to see how he becomes Vader. We're going to get to look at that. So this was how are they going to tie this up at the end? How are they going to hopefully mesh them together? That's why it was so good.
And just some of the smaller details, like you see the clones even after they've been issued Order 66. So Rex takes Ahsoka out because they're kind of trapped on that observation deck, and they're like, okay, how are we going to get to the shuttle that we need? And so Ahsoka comes up with the idea to have Rex, take her out there as if she has surrendered, and even then he's trying to tell Jesse. He's like, look, she's not a Jedi anymore. We don't have to do this. And you can see him go,
I thought for a second there,
I don't know.
I thought that might actually work. Like,
I thought it might too.
And she even says, like, she's like, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but I have an idea.
Yeah. And so even then, the clones aren't just like robots with flesh. Yeah. And even after what they were, that chip is for, they're still able to go, let me contemplate that for at least a second. Okay, no, and I'm still going to go with Order 66, and that's treason, and that's what we were bred for. But I liked that little touch that for a minute there he was, contemplating it and thinking it. But even like when they killed the droids that were helping Ahsoka, it's just was like, oh man, these clones are like, this sucks because this whole series we've been on their side, and now they're I mean, those droids were
Yeah.
cute and nice, and they beeped,
they helped.
and
They
you know,
saved-
and they
they
helped.
really
and
saved the day.
They were
Like-
good
like
guys.
she's
Yeah,
not
they did.
able to
She
do
couldn't
what
do
she
it.
did if-
right,
without
and
those
so
droids.
they gave their little droid lives, and the clones were. And I was like, that little touch just added to me. Instead of just being like, oh, they're fighting something and there's lasers everywhere. It's
Yeah.
like, wow, these clones really have like
Right.
turned. Like they will kill her.
Yeah, and there is a big turn though. And one thing that you actually, is a conversation that you and I had off air like 2 months ago, whatever, where we were talking about how you love like as the series progresses that they get names. Like it's not just CT whatever. It's Rex or Fives or Jesse or whatever.
Yeah.
And that they call each other by those names. Like they don't even refer to each other by their numbers anymore.
Yeah.
But that changes with Order 66. I don't know if you caught that, but like they're saying, they don't say, oh, we got to find Rex. They're saying we got to find CT-7627.
Ah, you know what? I did not catch that.
Yeah, they refused to call him Rex at that point. So
Interesting.
So I agree with you. I'm not trying to contradict what you said. I'm saying there's definitely a transition
There's a
happening.
shift.
Yeah, where they're even mentally they're starting to go back in their brains to, no, we're just bred for war. This isn't about relationships. It's about war.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah.
So Maul takes the ship and just basically is like, I'm out of here, no remorse. See you later, which I think was very fitting.
Yeah, that's what he is. That's what he does.
For Maul, yeah, he's just like, okay, I'm out. But at the same time, Ahsoka knowing, and she even has this conversation with Rex. Rex is like, they're gonna kill us, and she's like, I'm not gonna be the one to kill them.
Yeah.
Set this to, and it's like, in some ways, like Ahsoka has almost becomes like the moral compass for the Jedi and the show, and I thought that was very interesting how even Rex was like, we basically have to kill them. Like, I know they're my brothers, but like right now they do not care.
That had to have been a hard decision for Rex. I can't imagine him. Like, I wasn't sure that he was going to come to that conclusion. Like, I thought he might actually kind of go with her and say, okay, let's not fight these guys or whatever. But yeah, I think you're right. We kind of talked about that a couple episodes ago about how Ahsoka. I mean, we saw this. Obviously from 5, 6, 7, 8, those episodes of the season, but she is not on board with the council at all. Like, she even after all this time, like, she hasn't changed her mind.
Well, she's just so disenfranchised by it. She just seen the inner workings of it, and it's not what she signed up for originally.
When it was at the end of episode, I don't know, 9 or it was 8 or 9 or somewhere in there, but like they actually kind of extend. Oh, Anakin sees Ahsoka for the first time in a year or whatever it's been, and he says, hey, you're welcome back anytime. And she I mean, she doesn't even think about it. She just kind of very coldly just says, I'm sorry, I'm not. That's not for me. That's not my life.
Well,
anymore.
and even on the hologram Zoom meeting they had with
quarantine
with what's his face,
Mace
Windu
Windu.
in the gang,
Who's being a jerk.
but even they're trying. She comes at it with, I'm a citizen now, I'm not a Jedi.
Yeah.
And then basically the conversation comes around to her being able to give some input, but then basically Mace Windu's like, yeah, you're a citizen, so you probably need to get out of here, I guess.
Which that right there is such a pivotal moment, because right then, like, she had the information about what Darth Maul said about Anakin turning, and they had just sent Anakin to go in Revenge of the Sith to go to Palpatine's chambers to inform him about General Grievous, which is where he reveals himself as a Sith. And it's like, if they wouldn't have been, if Mace Windu wouldn't have been such a butthead, and there wouldn't have been this rub, because even then Yoda like hangs back and is like, I feel like there's more on your mind. Are you sure you don't want to say anything? And she's like, nope. And it's like, that would have changed the whole course of history if she would have been able to warn them that Anakin might be falling to the dark side. But so there's so much nuance there, because one, it is focused on her relationship with the Jedi and the Council, and of course their hubris, but also, like, I don't know if she still doesn't believe it. I still think she's at this point where she's like, no, I can't even.
That would even happen.
Yeah, I don't even, and I don't even know after she feels when she's, later when she's on the bridge and, you hear the dialogue from Revenge of the Sith and she's like grabbing her chest like, oh my gosh, something bad has happened. I don't even know if she still fully accepts it then, because when you fast forward to Rebels, which is also a good show, it's not as good as Clone Wars.
Right.
You know, they have a duel there and they sense each other at some point, and she's just like, I mean, when she senses Vader. So, I mean, I don't know if she like fully even just really accepts the truth until years later, you know, even though it's kind of right there in front of her as far as the Force is showing her.
I just like politically where she's at at this stage in the timeline and how perfect it is to tell this kind of story. Like, I think there's no other Jedi, there's no one with Force sensitive powers that could have told the story quite the same, because she is aloof. Like, she's outside of the bounds of all the politics that's going on. And I love that. It's so perfect, perfect storytelling. Jack, one of the things we talked about on 2 episodes ago was they kind of set up this idea. I think it was Obi-Wan or Yoda. No, I think it's Yoda that tells Ahsoka, like, hey, you need to get in touch with Anakin. Like, there's something going on. I can't quite place exactly where his head's at, but emotionally he's going to a dark place. I need you to get in contact with him. I need you to get him, you know, on a holo call type of thing.
Right.
And she, as we learned from the last couple of episodes, that never happens. She never actually gets the chance to do that. Did you want to see that? What do you think she would have said? Like, what that scene that we never got, that got teased, but we never got.
I feel like that tease, and then just basically what we've been talking about, like her inability to contact him is probably what the storytelling is pushing toward. Maybe she probably does have some sort of effect. Maybe it doesn't fix it completely. Maybe there's a different result. But like, I think that basically, I think the storytelling is leading you to know, hey, if she could have,
right, something
different would have happened. She didn't, so it didn't. But I think it was like, that's just their nod of like, hey, in the grand scheme, we really intend you to understand. Like, Ahsoka could have had an impact with Anakin, but she wasn't able to. So now he's, jerkwad.
Yeah,
mass killer.
Yes,
like she could have prevented everything that happens, possibly. The
young ones. You even kill the young ones.
The younglings, yeah. And, I was speaking of that. I was wondering if we were going to get a little more of that, like, scene of Anakin,
with new added graphics.
in the Jedi Temple. But Star Wars is filled, and I've thought before about...
Anakin, play catch with me again.
Okay.
You're back. But I can't see anything with the shield down. Sorry, I'm done now.
It's okay.
And scene.
No, I lost my train. Well, Star Wars is full of that kind of stuff, and it fit well because there's Revenge of the Sith is all about that tipping point of Anakin and the psychology of being manipulated and like what So honestly, the whole thing of like, oh man, if Ahsoka just could have, but that's all Revenge of the Sith is. Oh, if this just would have happened, or if this would have been just a little bit different, or if somebody would realize this, like there's so much that just had to happen perfectly for Anakin to fall to the dark side. But I've also thought about all the things in Star Wars, like, okay, so if the snow monster would have eaten Luke at the beginning of, it's over.
Sure.
Like there's all of these things that it's like, oh, if the stormtrooper would have shot Han Solo in the docking bay in episode 4, then he would have never made it. There's like all of these things right. Star Wars has to, and then of course the sequel trilogy just takes that to, the Millennium Falcon's on Jakku, of course it is. Where Rey is, who is Palpatine's granddaughter. And
this
I get it, like
ship.
It's the will of the Force and all that, and you have to suspend belief at some point. But it's like, out of all of the things that Star Wars does, to where you're like, okay, if this would have happened, then the story's over. I think the Ahsoka thing is on the high list of things that are well done versus things that aren't well done in the Star Wars universe. So the way they escape, if I can go back to the episode here, the way that they escape was pretty intense. I think the 3rd episode was better overall. When Order 66 is executed and her saving Rex.
I agree. I think the 4th episode in this 4-episode arc is just a lot of action.
Yes.
And there's not a lot of plot development going on, but it was really exciting to watch. But
yes.
It just, I think it just felt like if you watch these 4 as a whole and didn't just watch just that one episode on that one day, which came out on Star Wars Day, by the way, May 4th, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, Monday is a Monday of all days. Yeah.
But watching all 4 back to back in the theater, you get more of a cohesive kind of ebb and flow of plot, then action, plot, and then action. This episode was like really heavy on action. So I think I agree. Episode 3 was my favorite episode, but episode 4, especially with the way that it ended all the way at the end, which we'll talk about in a second, was really cool too. But yeah, it was just a lot of action. But yeah, her jumping from like ship to ship and trying to get it back into Rex's the ship that Rex is piloting,
and the droids dying. That really got to me.
Well,
that bothered me.
And I was going to say this earlier. The Clone Wars. Another thing, droids have been a huge thing on Clone Wars, and so it was kind of appropriate that those 3 droids help her in the way that they help her. And then it sucks that they die.
Yeah,
but she also humanizes those droids.
In the few episodes prior, when she goes to the droids for help, because the Siege of Mandalore is a very, it's much more dark, it's much more intense, it's much more adult. And so when she goes to the droids, I'm like, are things about to get goofy? Because sometimes droids are comic relief, or it kind of just gets.
Oh yeah.
And so I had a moment there where she went to the droids, and I was like, is the tone about to change, or how's this going to go? But I think it was really well done, and by the time the droids were actually killed, which this tells you something, they didn't even show the droids being like, they're not humans, like, so we'll see in graphic not graphic detail, but like you get clones getting decapitated and their arms coming off,
but
and
we can't
see the droids getting blasted apart. Right. It just shows
we couldn't dare do that.
Right. It just shows you by that point in the arc how I think you're attached. So they're like, this is too intense.
And they are
hear him screaming.
Even these astromech droids, which are not as anthropomorphic as like a C-3PO or whatever, feel human to us. Like we don't want to see these characters,
and we've
die.
never met them before the arc.
Right.
Like
exactly.
these are brand new droids, but I'm like, R7, why did it have to end so early for you? So young.
I did love how they were involved in the combat, like in a
where they were controlling the floors. Yeah.
They were literally like
smart,
like pushing clones into the air, like with the floor and stuff like that. It was really cool to watch.
It was very cool, and also the scene where Ahsoka puts her lightsabers on the ground and does a big circle to cut a hole through the floor. There's a deleted scene from Revenge of the Sith. It's at the beginning of the movie where Obi-Wan and Anakin use that exact same tactic to get away from General Grievous when they're surrounded, but it was cut.
Oh, cool.
And so that was a callback to that deleted scene.
I love General Grievous, by the way.
Yeah,
I wish he would have got. Have you ever seen the Clone Wars cartoon that happened before
brutal. In that series, he is.
Oh my gosh, he's
beast.
a monster. Yeah. Yes, he's a monster. I think that's a very underexplored character in the universe, and I think he needs a little bit more.
But yet another pawn
fleshing out
in the Emperor's grand
That's absolutely
scheme.
right. Just another pawn.
Isn't that crazy?
But in the Revenge of the Sith movie, because he's not in episode 2, and then so the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, you're like, okay, here's another guy. He's bad. He twirls lightsabers.
Yeah.
And I just, watching before all the Clone Wars stuff, I was like, why is he? Is he here because Dooku gets killed at the beginning and you need another villain?
Yeah.
And he was just, to me, kind of a filler. I didn't like him until the Clone Wars. So, and I thought that the Clone Wars, if there's one thing I think they didn't do well, and that was develop Dooku as a character. He's just kind of
his fall from the Jedi Order, and
he's just kind of like, I am a bad guy. I'm and I'm like, there's so much
was he
more.
Trained by Yoda? Wasn't he trained by Yoda? I feel like I read that.
No. Okay.
Was he trained by Qui-Gon?
Yeah, he was Yoda's apprentice.
Qui-Gon was his apprentice, I think.
That's what it was.
Yeah, Qui-Gon Jinn was Dooku's apprentice, but he was Yoda's apprentice.
Yeah.
Yoda trained Dooku trained Qui-Gon.
Yes.
This episode's been great because we had a who would win scenario. And now we just went down some the Jedi learning tree as well. So good.
So-and-so trained, who then trained Obi-Wan, who then trained Anakin, who then trained,
Which would be fun to talk about that forever. And I'm sure there's podcasts out there that if they heard this conversation, they'd be like, well, these guys don't know anything they're talking about.
Well, yeah, because there's been a few, like, as we've been talking, there's like a species that I didn't know to mention, or, a planet, and I'm like, somebody out there is going to listen to this and be like, it's the blah, blah, blah thing. Like, and that's okay. Like, that's why I said the disclaimer at the beginning, like, I'm definitely above average, but I'm nowhere near as deep. Like, I know you've met my friend Adam, who is just like an encyclopedia of Star Wars, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he makes me feel...
Yeah. He's probably one that's listening to this, and if he's listening to this, he's like, why aren't I on that? Which is
idiot.
true.
He's like, actually, Darth Maul's midichlorian count is
isn't he
this
on-
compared to Vader. He's
Well,
like,
why isn't he? I mean, he should have been on. We should have been on here. So maybe we could phone him. Right? Could you have his put his phone on?
yeah,
here
can you tell me Darth Maul's midichlorian
We'll call
count?
him.
So Ahsoka gets on that ship. She kind of does it's kind of the Siege of Mandalore type of thing where she's jumping from ship to ship down to the surface of Mandalore. She kind of does that to kind of get into the ship with Rex, and they get in together and fly off. And that's essentially the last that we see of Ahsoka. Well, no, I'm sorry. They're on the ground and they put all those
They bury them.
yeah,
Bury the clones.
and it's kind of the Mandalorian. We saw that in Mandalorian season 1 where like their
Heads
their
on a
helmets
pike,
are on pikes,
basically.
Yeah.
which I thought that was a cool thing that like we saw that in Mandalorian, and so we know that those pikes stick around for a long time. Obviously post Return of the Jedi, but we actually see it at the end of the season, and then we get that awesome classic scene with Vader at the end. I want to go all the way back to episode 1 of the season when we were talking about it on our show. Back then, go back and listen to it. Jack and I were talking about like, oh man, are we going to see, is this going to lead right up to the events of Revenge of the Sith? We were so getting about just it going up to like literal minute 0 and then finishing there. Not only did we get events that are simultaneous, that are side by side, parallel to Revenge of the Sith, we get a scene that happens after Revenge of the Sith in the Clone Wars, which I never would have thought that was ever going to come.
Right.
Darth Vader is actually a credited character in Clone Wars, not Anakin, but Darth Vader is actually in the show in those last few minutes. So, talk about that, just kind of seeing him and
that's really cool.
What that meant.
It was a good job of again storytelling, kind of going beyond like the. Just what you saw in the end of this, and he thinks she's dead. He's assuming she's dead, right?
Correct. Yes, that's why she left the lightsaber there, is so that way he would, or the Empire, whoever would assume that okay, we even if we find out that the ship was the last place she was, which I guess Anakin probably would be able to deduce that. Her lightsaber's here, and if she was alive, she would have taken that with her. So,
right.
Yeah, that's why she left it. I'm sorry, Jack. Were you?
No, I'm thinking right now.
That ending was just so beautiful. It was awesome because here's what it encompasses so many things so simply. So everybody, they crash, all the clones die. And Ahsoka and Rex bury them, leave the pikes. Next thing, it's winter now, so obviously some time has passed, and
who knows, maybe a lot of time.
And it's stormtroopers, so the clones have been replaced.
That is true,
right?
So a lot of time.
Yeah, so a lot of time has passed. Clones are totally phased out and gone. Darth Vader comes down, finds the ship, which he made that. I mean, he gave Ahsoka that lightsaber, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely some emotion. You can see the eyes of Anakin Skywalker, through the red helmet. And he's, ignites this blue lightsaber and holds it for a minute, and you can tell he's reflecting. But what I think is cool is like the clone helmet, which was the whole thing where they like painted, Ahsoka's emblem or the way her face is or whatever on their thing was so cool, especially after Order 66, because they're trying to kill her, but they've got this, thing. It's so well done. Huh. So the clone helmet is sticking out of the snow, symbolizing the Clone Wars, and just like everyone else, they were just pawns of Sidious.
Yes.
And you see the reflection of Darth Vader. They've been replaced. So it was just
crazy.
It
was a perfect
dude
with the clone helmet right there.
How many shows have you guys seen
so well done
that have had like, let's say, more than 5 seasons and have stuck the landing like this show? Like everyone thinks of Lost obviously immediately, but like I mean there are lots
whoa did you just say that Lost struck the landing?
No, I was saying that's an example.
I think he was listening.
Okay, I was like, whoa, stop, dude.
No.
We need to have a whole nother episode about the ending of Lost.
And we can talk about that
too.
I love Lost, but you're right. Like the ending was still like.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead. Back to Star Wars.
I do know one human being that actually loves the ending of Lost. But
come on.
Yeah, for the most part, nobody likes it. But you can point to so many shows out there that have gone for 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons like this show, and they never end well. Like it's nearly impossible to end a show that people have that much time invested in and have everyone be satisfied with the ending. Filoni pulled it off.
Oh
man.
yeah,
I can't imagine the pressure that he was under to try to do this right. And can you think of any better ending? Like it was literally, everything that we
I mean,
wanted. Like I was blown away. I watched those last few frames. I was like, how did he do it? How did he pull this off? Like, it's amazing.
I was worried.
I was too. Especially after,
Yeah, I was worried.
I was worried.
I was worried too because you'd been like, "Who? Oh, I ran away from the Jedi. Well, who are you? I'm Ahsoka Skywalker." Or something like, "Oh no, like you're so something
so
weird,
close.
Right? You were so close." Right.
yeah, especially after the Martez sisters.
Well, and we talked about even the first 4 episodes, how it took us a couple episodes to lower our expectations because we had covered
from the Mandalorian. Yeah.
And Mandalorian as a show is, for me, was awesome. Like we talked about it on the show, so we were excited, and I think we just anticipated that level. Of course, it's Star Wars, so they're going to this animated show that initially was for kids. Obviously, it can obviously match the drama of the Mandalorian, which was like dumb on my part to even imagine that. But once we kind of settled into the Bad Batch, we're kind of like, this is pretty good.
Yeah,
I
really liked
for
that
me, the Bad Batch was a solid B. Like those 4 episodes is a solid B.
Sure.
And then you go to the next arc, and it was like, wait, what's happening?
Yeah.
Like it's filler. Like it's literally like
Getting a little worried.
if you watched.
It felt like season 3 of Clone Wars.
Yeah, it did.
And
Yeah, you're right.
It was like they had a bunch of on a show that had it's Scooby-Doo, and Scooby-Doo's got 24, 30 episodes a season or whatever. I mean, making up stuff here, and then they're like, okay, sure, we can go shopping with Zelma on one of these. That's great. Daphne can go to a prom, whatever. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
No,
we don't have that much time. We only have 12 episodes.
You're on the final season.
We're in trouble here.
Right.
And then to completely redeem itself.
Oh my gosh.
Unbelievable. Can I give some IMDb?
Oh, I was going to ask
ratings.
you. I'm glad you have that out because he's been doing IMDb. Are you going to go through all 12?
Yeah, I will real quick.
Okay, that's fine. Because we've been doing this with every two episodes. It will make sense to you. I'm very eager to find out the last 2 episodes.
So episode 1, a Bad Batch, 8.4. Episode 2, A Distant Echo, 8.2. This is stars. This is rated by people on IMDb,
Fans,
so it's official, obviously. Episode 3, On the Wings of Caradax, a 7.8, which I can see that one being a little bit lower.
Yeah.
Number 4, Unfinished Business, which is the ending of that arc, an 8.5, so a solid rating. The series, by the way, just for reference, the series altogether has an 8 out of 10. Okay, so the series in general has an 8.10, an 8 out of 10.
So fans were pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
First.
Oh, sure.
Gone with a Trace, episode 5, 6.5.
Yep.
Deal No Deal, this is episode 6, 6.2.
It gets worse.
Episode 7, Dangerous Debt, or i.e. Prison Life, 6.
That's the one where basically they start and end in the cell.
And that's
I want to say that one used to be like 5.8 or 5.9.
Yeah, it was low, and then it's starting to come back. Apparently, people were like, well, okay, we were too harsh.
That bad.
Number 8, Together Again, 7.2.
Okay.
You ready for this one?
Because of Maul.
Old Friends Not Forgotten, episode 9, 9.8.
Wow.
Phantom Apprentice, 9.9.
Oh, I knew that was going to be high.
Shattered, episode 11, 9and episode 12, 9.9.
Wow.
Have you ever seen anything like that? I mean, like in one season, this...
So I said this on the last episode, a couple episodes ago when we last looked at those that data, but 9.9 basically means almost everyone gave it a perfect 10.
Right.
Just ramp it up to, I give it an 11 if I could, type of thing. Like that shows you how much people loved him.
That 6 is the lowest of anything.
I mean, the Siege of Mandalore was just, the arc was, I mean, I can't say that it's perfect, but man, it is close. I mean,
really
it is
good.
just so good.
Really, really good.
Honestly, I would go back and watch these last 4 episodes of the Clone Wars more before I'd go back and even watch the Mandalorian season 1, which is saying a lot because I loved Mandalorian season 1. But the fact that you're getting named characters in those last 4 episodes, and I've said this is no surprise to Jack, but like Ahsoka is a top 5 Star Wars character for me.
You know they're casting her in The Mandalorian, right?
Yes,
for
I'm
season.
super,
And
I can't wait.
One other thing about Mandalorian, they have cast the guy who played Jango Fett in the prequels is coming back.
Interesting.
So he's probably going to be Boba Fett. I mean, he's probably going to be
Wow.
the face of Boba Fett. I mean,
That'd be
because
awesome.
Jango's
That would be very
long,
interesting.
lost his head at this
Well,
point.
and I like this era, the prequel era, and especially around Revenge of the Sith is my favorite part of
cool.
Star Wars, right? Like, of course, it spans a lot of different eras and stuff. And so, I like The Mandalorian, and I know we're not here to talk about that necessarily, but I like the Jedi stuff. I like the politics stuff.
Yeah.
And so The Mandalorian was great. Don't get me wrong, like, loved it, whatever. But it's just not as appealing to me as, like this arc, because it's like, well, it's politics. It's, the prequel era when you have all these different Jedi doing stuff. And I'm just not as interested in kind of the underworld bounty hunters and just the stuff that the further away you get from the Force,
the main vein of
vein that the less interested.
Well, I will say this. I went back and watched about a week and a half ago. I watched Solo again, and that movie. A lot of people were like, "It's not very good." But I will say the arc, that middle 4 episodes, really play into the Solo movie.
Yeah, he's in it, right? The villain appeared in one of the episodes in season 7.
Yeah, he's briefly shown as one of the crime.
Yeah,
okay.
When Maul is basically having a Zoom call with the Pikes. And
what's his face?
What's that guy? The guy with the scars. What's his name? He's the main. He's the villain in Solo. I can't remember his name now.
Paul Bettany's character.
But he's there representing his crime.
Yes,
Sub-syndicate.
and then there's also
that works for Maul, and that's that's the cool thing about the Solo movie. Like it all ties that together. You hear about the Pikes, you hear about the Spice, you hear about all of it. That was the one cool thing.
I'll probably rewatch that again this weekend.
Worth watching.
Mention it. Yeah, especially now.
And I watched it, and I was like, okay, well, this doesn't absolutely justify those middle 4 episodes, but at least it gives some context. And makes it beneficial.
Well, and that's what I like about Dave Filoni is he's like, hey, let's expand the lore. Let's tie it all in. Let's make it appear like it's one universe. So the third character was, his name starts with an X. It's like Prince Zizor. He's part of the Black Sun. He is the main antagonist in the Shadows of the Empire.
Right, the expanded universe, the extended universe.
Which occurs between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and is all about Han Solo's transport and them trying to rescue Han Solo. But in that movie, it's not a movie. It was in the 90s, it was a dry run for the marketing campaign of Episode 1. And so they had a book, they had a video game, and they had a graphic novel comic book series. Yeah. They did all Star Wars stuff without actually having a movie.
It's called Shadows?
Shadows of the Empire.
And it was on Nintendo
64 video game.
Okay.
And there
was it was good. I remember playing it. It was a good
and a novel. And and so there's characters that don't appear in anywhere else. There's a Han Solo-esque smuggler named Dash Rendar that appears.
And it's like Blast from the Past. I still remember this now.
Yeah, Prince Zizor.
So
essentially, the Emperor elevates this crime lord, Prince Zizor, up to almost an equal level of Darth Vader. Because he's trying to tick Darth Vader off, and they're trying to basically compete with each other for the Emperor's, attention and influence and whatever. And so it has Shadows of the Empire has a lot to do with the crime world and the Hutts and all kinds of different stuff. That's where Leia gets the costume that she wears in Return of the Jedi, her bounty hunter costume. Okay. She gets that costume in Shadows of the Empire.
Okay.
Well, it's Legends now. It's not a part of canon.
Sure.
But, a small segment of Star Wars fans, when they saw Darth Maul talking to Prince Zizor, they're like, please make this, do something with Shadows of the Empire, because it's a great story. Shadows of the Empire is a really great story. Like, he's at the Battle of Hoth. That's where Shadows of the Empire starts. Like, he's flying around,
Cool.
Yeah, so look into, I wouldn't necessarily say read the novel or anything like that, but just, give it a good Wikipedia article.
That's awesome.
Read
I might look for the game.
Yeah, Shadows. Yeah, I have it. If you got an N64, I've got Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah.
It's hard. It was an early N64 release.
It has a different control to it.
They hadn't figured out 3D.
But at the time of GoldenEye and at the time of those, the really good wrestling games that I like so much, like that game came out about the same time, and then Star Fox 64 was
It was just it came out a few months after Mario 64, so you can tell they were still figuring out. So
rough,
it's rough to play, but the first few levels.
That's a really cool part of that. I remember trying to think of the part of that game that I was always like,
you got to play really the first level. You literally played in the Battle of Hoth.
That's what it is,
and it was like, man, to play that in 3D at the time. So coming back to the Siege of Mandalore, it was just there was all kinds of just little things throughout that whole arc that tied so many other things together about Mandalore, about Maul, about the Revenge of the Sith, about Rebels even. And if you haven't watched Rebels, I don't think you have.
No, I need to.
I don't know if you're just totally oversaturated with Star Wars. If you just
talked about that.
you might need a break.
I think it's going to be July before I probably get back into Star Wars. But I'm going to start with Rebels.
But it's 4 seasons, and kind of like the Clone Wars, the first season of Rebels is a little bit of a slog to get through.
Yeah.
But once you get halfway into season 2, man, you're going to tread through it. And Rebels just has some really, really great stuff. Maul, of course, is in it, and he eventually fights Obi-Wan Kenobi in the desert, and so there's a lot of really good stuff.
Oh, that reminds me. Sorry, go ahead and finish your thought, and then I have a question.
that was the end.
Okay. So yeah, I did read about that this week. About after having watched that episode, read about how they. It's not the last we see of Maul. Obviously, he's in Solo, a Star Wars movie, and then he briefly, and then we see him in Rebels. More importantly, I've not seen Rebels. I did see like some screenshots of that thing. I didn't want to get too spoiled, but do we see him in the Kenobi TV series?
Which is it? Has it been shelved?
I think it keeps getting delayed, but as far as I know, it's not been completely canceled.
It's still happening. I don't.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
They're not going to do it this year.
I would love to see
I think
that.
they were originally shooting for 2020. That's not going to happen. I think we'll get it in 2021. But do we see a live action Maul in that show? Maybe not for the whole series, just a couple episodes. And if so, it can't possibly be Ray Park, right?
I don't know. That's really hard to say because I really want to say yes, and I think they're going to be like, okay, we kind of have to do this. But unless you break the lore, it's going to be really hard because it's clear when they meet in the desert at Rebels that they haven't seen each other since then. So if you're going to include him in the show, I guess you could show him hunting for Obi-Wan the whole time, but it's like, how do you? There would be no payoff, right? Because them actually, unless you just recreate the scene. So that's a good question. I don't know.
Do we know for sure that Kenobi occurs before the events of Rebels?
It's 15 years, I think, after, or it's after Revenge. So
when does that scene in Rebels happen? Is it?
It happens right before, not very long before A New Hope.
Okay, so it's an old Kenobi then.
Oh yeah, it's definitely an old Kenobi.
Okay.
Yeah,
maybe we won't see him then.
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I hope. I love seeing Darth Maul.
I would love to see it if they can get someone to play him that would do a good job with it. And maybe it's Ray Park. Maybe they could do anything with CGI.
I mean, he is old Darth Maul at
that's
that
true.
point.
He is quite a bit older here.
Yeah. By the way, if you, I have the Son of Dathomir comics that cover what happened to Darth Maul in between. When Sidious takes him down, and then when he reappears again.
I read them.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I read them about a month ago. I really liked them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and this, like Darth Maul getting away, there's so much left to do with Darth Maul in between what we just saw on the Siege of Mandalore and when he reappears in Rebels. I mean, this character is not done.
No, and I would applaud that.
Sure.
They need to do some more Maul stuff.
Yes, agreed.
I mean, I liked him in what we saw of him previously in Clone Wars season 4, 5, 6, whatever. He was great. I loved him in the comics, and then of course just little cameos and stuff that we've seen of him. But I want to see more Maul. Like the season 7 of Clone Wars has solidified him as one of the greatest villains in all of Star Wars, and I would love to see more of him.
My favorite moment in the 9 films is in episode 1 when Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan Kenobi go to fight Darth Maul on Naboo.
2-on-1.
Yeah, now you can debate the rest of the movie if you want to.
Yeah.
But just like what really just tickles my Star Wars itch is that moment when Duel of the Fates starts playing.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, "We'll handle this," and they're I just
so
absolutely love that scene.
It's cool.
Yeah. Yep, I'd love to see more Maul. I don't think it sounds like we won't get in Kenobi, but I don't know. Are they doing more Rebels? Is that show?
That show's done.
The
way that the season 4 ended, I'm not sure. Like they could carry on the story because they brought. Well, I guess I don't want to.
Does it lead? Yeah,
I'll refrain. Yeah, I won't spoil anything.
But like, does it lead right up to the events of A New Hope?
Not in the same way that the Siege of Mandalore just did with Revenge of the Sith.
Okay, gotcha.
It's not quite.
So there's some
it's
space.
not quite that close.
Right. Okay.
But it's pretty close.
Of course, we have Rogue One too. That kind of leads right up. But
yeah, I would say it leads closer to Rogue One than it does to.
Okay.
Man, it's really hard for me to talk about this without spoiling anything. So
as far as like characters that you see in that episode, it seems like it's maybe a lead up to Rogue
Well,
One.
and there are, because in Rebels there are several original trilogy main characters that appear in Rebels.
Yeah, that gets me excited to watch it for sure.
So,
Jack, any closing thoughts on Clone Wars? I was going to say season 7 of the Clone Wars, but it is literally the end of Clone Wars.
I thought they wrapped it up really well. I mean, I can't believe that they were able to do that, because we've talked about other shows that you're not able to do that with, and this thing, man. Yeah, that's about it. I don't have a whole lot other than just it was really cool
to see some interviews with Filoni, because I saw that he did an interview like 5 days ago and stuff like that. I would love to get his thoughts on the series as a whole. So,
did you watch? I haven't seen it. Emergency Awesome. Did he talk about this thing?
Did
you watch the wrap up of this? What was his thoughts?
I mean, he loved it. Like, he was over the moon with it. He, of course, was just geeking over all the Revenge of the Sith nods and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
cool.
It's unbelievable. That supercut of, honestly, I'll probably watch it. Like, when some fan, they probably can't, just put it out.
And
there
think about that. Like, just another thing that solidifies how bad of a dude the Emperor Palpatine is. Well,
yeah, and I was going to mention this actually about 30 minutes ago. And we were talking a mile a minute, and I didn't get a chance to say anything, but like there is a moment where not just Ahsoka is like through the Force is sensing all the things, all the details that are going on in Coruscant, but Maul also senses it at the same time, and he laughs at one point and basically says something to I can't quote it exactly, but something to the effect of, I always knew that the plan was going to end this way. I just didn't know how it was going to happen. And now that I see Order 66 and understand that he's like, it makes perfect sense from how
brilliant.
He says it's brilliant. Yeah. Like he's just in awe of Palpatine in that moment.
It's crazy.
Even how animation is obviously much harder than live action to convey emotion. And I was thinking that when, Maul is in his little envelope thing that he's in, little which even that ties in, because the Mandalorians historically fought against Jedi and Force users, and so they had one of these like leftover, you can't use the Force envelopes that they had Maul in. And so he's in there and his eyes are moving. That's the only thing you can see. Yeah. But there's so much emotion that's conveyed through his eyes.
And his hot breath on the glass.
Yes, and I'm just like, the attention to detail in this is just incredible for an animated show.
Yeah.
Man, they did such a good job. And, to just sum up my thoughts, the Clone Wars series, it is my favorite piece of Star Wars. This show and the 7 seasons of the show. There are times where it dips a little bit. The first couple seasons, you can tell they're like, we made this for kids. And then in season 3, they're like, I feel like more adults are watching this. So Anakin's going to cut someone's head off right now. And we're going to talk more about the nuance of politics, and, they start kind of getting a little more, kids can still watch it, but you can tell that they're like, okay, we've
got to up it.
We're going to up this ante a little bit. And there, is nothing. I have not consumed better Star Wars than this show. Highly recommend it to anybody. I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you've probably at least watched The Siege of Mandalore,
right?
Which is fine. I would introduce somebody to Clone Wars using this.
That's cool.
And then tell them to go back and start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because you can just say, look, this was his apprentice, and and use it to hook them. But man, there's nothing better about Star Wars than the Clone Wars series.
So episode 1 of season 1 came out in October of 2008, 12 years ago. So it's been a long time in the making. Obviously, it took a 6-year gap from season 6 to season 7. But 12 years ago, Dave Filoni, like, would he have even seen, like, could he have even predicted how it would end up, like, 7 seasons later and stuff like that? Probably not. I think he was probably just excited just to do Star Wars at all back then.
Oh, yeah.
And then to see how he's crafted this thing into what is, for a lot of people like yourself, and honestly, I'm kind of right there with you, as some of the best Star Wars media that we have, period, is really, it's hats off to him, man. Like, I can't imagine the task.
I wish that Dave Filoni, and to a certain extent Favreau, I wish that they would just take over Lucasfilm. And
yeah,
I don't want to.
They will.
I don't want to get into all the like Kathleen Kennedy stuff and some of the decisions that were made, but it's like, it just, to me, you look at the stuff that Dave Filoni is a part of, and you're like, everybody likes this, and it's really, really good Star Wars. And then you look at the other stuff, and you're like, I know it made money, but like
we could do a whole episode on 7, 8, 9 of the movies.
Sure. Oh yeah,
and that's like a 2-hour conversation.
Oh
but
yeah,
the way I think
I'm just trying to give Dave Filoni credit of how
absolutely.
good he is. That he could have been in charge of the sequel trilogy, and I think it would have turned out wonderful.
Oh, absolutely, I agree. And I think a lot of whether you like individual movies, 7, 8, 9 better than others, whatever, that's a whole conversation. I think most Star Wars fans that have been with this series since the 70s, 80s, 90s would probably agree that they just were not a fan of how those stories were handled at a macro level. Like,
sure, yeah.
Like that there wasn't one director or one shot caller. Like it was literally just this person do this, this person do that. We're going to try to gel it all together.
It was the opposite of Dave Filoni's approach, which is everything needs to fit into the lore.
And there's care taken, there's care taken with the product. Like I feel like, and I like J.J. Abrams, and I'm not adverse to his 2 movies. Well, it's long, I've talked about Last Jedi till my face is blue. But anyway, but it's one of those where I feel like Filoni, and you said Jon Favreau too, like that would be
if the
ideal.
news came out today that Dave Filoni was taking over,
I'd be so
Kennedy's,
excited.
Like that would be awesome. I would be like,
that was the
fits.
key in the Marvel universe, like
continuity.
Kevin Feige being in charge of things.
Yeah.
And here's the boss. Here's who's in charge. Here's the vision, and this is what we're gonna do, and sticking to that.
The strength of Feige's command has been that, literally directors have dropped off of a couple of the movies because of disagreements with Feige, and it's because he was so unwilling to budge on that's not where we're headed. That's not where this is going.
Yes.
And I applaud, even though I hate to see directors jump off of projects and stuff in the middle of shoots. Hats off to Feige for saying, no, I'm sticking to my guns, and I can see the greater picture.
It's a better product.
See.
It's a better product when you take care of where they're headed.
And I'm not saying Kathleen Kennedy. I don't know anything about Kathleen. I'm just saying we need someone, and I think that I'm hoping Disney has heard loud and clear from the fans over the last couple years even, and is going to make those changes. Who knows if they will, but I think they would have to be tone deaf to not know that something needs to change as far as.
Of course, what's done is done too. I mean, Carrie Fisher's gone. You've already made the sequel. You've already kind of,
Now your pivot's going to be what's next. Like what's
they've said
any new eras. What's next? And it may be a long time.
They've said definitively that there's no more Skywalker stuff. I mean, we're moving on from that whole thing. So. It's going to be a new era for Star Wars. I have no idea what's next. No one knows, but I really hope that at least far as like producer level, like grand picture, macro level stuff, that they have some better ideas going.
They've just announced a Binks trilogy. It's just called Binks. It's Jar Jar.
There's rumors that he's gonna at least make a small appearance in the Kenobi show,
where he force pushes him off a mountain.
It's
Obi-Wan.
I'm not as big of a Jar Jar hater. I'm okay.
It makes me laugh. Like I
actually would like to see.
He's
Jar Jar.
trope now. Like he is. Like it's fun now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Urkel annoyed people too, but now when you think of Urkel, what do you think? That's great nostalgia. You know what I'm saying? Oh, it's Urkel.
No,
great.
I understand. But
Golden Girls. It's Betty White. Look at Betty White, how popular she is.
I am really looking forward, especially knowing that Filoni's involved, in seeing Ahsoka Tano in The Mandalorian.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like we saw her there, we see her in Rebels. And
sounds like you're going to get a lot of... They're going to start being some major
some
cameos
no-name
now
actress.
which is going to be awesome.
It's Rosario Dawson.
I know.
I think she's going to be a huge part of that
she'll
show.
make that makes a lot of sense.
And she's been wanting to play Ahsoka Tano. Like, she's been openly advocating for, hey, if you do this in live action, please use
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
And she'll fit. It'll make sense.
Cool. And she's the right age for it. We talked about that already. Like I think we looked her up. She's 40. Like, in the timeline.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Correct. Ahsoka's a little, because I think at the beginning of the Clone Wars, she's like 14.
Yeah, she's super young.
Yeah, she was super, and it showed. And honestly, she was not a very well liked character when the Clone Wars started.
Yeah.
And Dave Filoni was like, just give her time. Like, we want to develop her arc. She's kind of supposed to be this, she's supposed to kind of give Anakin a run for his money, because you give Anakin this, Anakin Skywalker's getting a Padawan? Oh, that's oh man, that blows my mind. It was a 14-year-old girl with sass. Like this, fine. I'll go do it myself.
I know, gosh.
And it, okay, she was annoying, but it fit, and it was good for Anakin's character arc, and obviously she, came to her own, and so I watched the Clone Wars and I thought it was okay, but season 1 and 2, man, especially going back and rewatching it is hard.
Yeah.
It's those first few, and that's why almost now I would introduce somebody to Star Wars to the Clone Wars with the Siege of Mandalore, because if I go, here's when they rescued Jabba's son.
Oh my gosh.
And they'd be like, what I like Star Wars, but this kind of sucks, and this looks like it's for kids.
This like sucks.
So it's like, no, but watch this we all know how it is. It's okay, it gets so much better. Yeah.
When is this is going to be?
I forgot about that.
That was the very first deal. Yeah, it was a movie too. It was like a 2-hour thing.
Oh my!
I can't wait to see more Ahsoka, and the fact that we're getting it this year gets me really pumped. So, here's my last question for you, Jake, before we sign off here. Why does Anakin call her Snips?
Because in that original episode where they rescue Jabba's son, she mouths off to him, and he was like, "Don't get snippy with me." And then
that's what drive me bonkers.
Yeah.
I forgot about that line.
And then basically it just kind of stuck, and he called her Snips, and for a while she was calling him Sky Guy.
Yeah.
And I thought that was dumb.
That was dumb.
I do remember that.
They dropped that eventually.
Well, and they kind of dropped Snips. I think he calls her Snips maybe one time in season 5 or something like that. But
but he does for a long as she ages because they just start calling each other Ahsoka and Anakin. You can see the respect that they have for each other rise. But that's because
that's been one of the most beautiful things in that series for me has been Ahsoka backing up and defending Anakin all the way. Even when he goes full dark side, in season 7, and people are starting to really question his motives and stuff like that, she's like, no, not Anakin. She's like, I know him. He wouldn't do that. And I love that about her. She is so trusting, and there's never any romantic between the two of them. And I love that they didn't even try to introduce anything weird because he's married and all this kind of stuff. But she, but as close as a male and female can get without romantic involvement is how they got in that series, and I loved that. They just,
I think it would have been cool during this Siege of Mandalore arc if there would have been some kind of conversation or interaction between Padme and Ahsoka, because in Revenge of the Sith, Padme is clearly worried about Anakin and is like, Obi-Wan, and that was one of the only things I thought might have added a little bit of something is if the two of them, because those two people, Ahsoka and Padme, are the two people that care about Anakin the most.
Sure.
And if they would have been able to have even though she couldn't talk to Anakin, if she could have talked to Padme, and they would have been like, oh yeah, da-da-da-da. Because you never really see, it's been a while since I've watched the whole series, and you just rewatched it. I don't recall any super meaningful interactions between Ahsoka and Padme.
They're kind of two separate worlds.
Yeah, they're almost like two separate worlds, and so I was wondering.
They're certainly in the same room quite a bit, but they don't have a lot of solo interaction.
Correct, and so to have that mutual we're worried about Anakin, he's important to both of us kind of conversation, I think that could have.
It's funny to think about Obi-Wan and Anakin not really. I mean, how many times have they even talked to each other this season?
That episode 1 of the Bad Batch.
And there's that scene where, and I thought this was interesting, where he's having a conversation with Padme, and basically he's like, "Oh, how was Padme?" Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know that you were talking to her. It's like, dummy, you gotta know, and then in Revenge of the Sith, he's like, Anakin is the father, isn't he? And it's like, are you just now kind of putting all this together? But
they don't really have time in episode 9, because in episode 9 you see the two of them. It's all of them, Mace and Yoda.
Yeah.
And Obi-Wan and Anakin are in the same room together, and they're discussing battle tactics with each other. Yeah. But then Obi-Wan immediately has to go deal with.
But then that series in general, there's times when those two are together a lot.
They're pretty buddy.
Yeah, and that's good. It fleshes that out because the movies did not do a good job at showing their camaraderie.
Yeah, their relationship starts dwindling pretty good even by season 5.
Right.
Season 6, they're really not hanging out very much.
Yeah.
Which is why, again, I wanted to see. And there was part of me that wanted to see an Ahsoka, Anakin, even a holo call, in episode 10 or 11 of season 7, because of their long-standing relationship and how much he trusts her opinion on stuff. He doesn't trust her opinion at all in the first couple seasons, but that quickly changes as the series goes on. And so, but like you said earlier, I think you actually absolutely nailed it. Had that conversation occurred, we might not have seen, that would have started a alternate timeline of events.
So another cool thing that they did in an earlier episode was when they talk about Satine. And, basically someone I don't remember what the context was now, but they basically was hey, remember, Satine, and you kind of had feelings for her. And he was like, yes, I did, but I didn't let that, get in the way of like what I was doing. Yeah. And then they pan for just a few seconds to Anakin, and Anakin gives Obi-Wan this look. And I was like, ooh, there's so much there, because it's essentially was Obi-Wan could have made similar choices and allowed his, romance with Satine to cause him to make different choices, and disobey the Jedi Order and have a forbidden love and all this stuff. But he made the opposite choice of what Anakin made. And I love how they put that in, and they showed Anakin giving Obi-Wan this side eye about like, oh yeah, that's cool for you that you made that choice, but whatever, dude.
But I feel like in some weird way, like, okay, Anakin makes the choices he makes that creates Darth Vader, that creates the Phantom Apprentice, quote unquote. It creates the Sith win, basically, right? Then you have the Jedi Order that they're so regimented in, this is our belief. We will not have feelings for anybody. We're going to be basically Gregorian monks and we can't have relationships with women. We can't have relationships with men. We can't have anything at all. It must be this way. And I feel like there's some happy medium in the middle where maybe if you had feelings and you weren't a robot Jedi, you could have seen maybe this coming, or maybe you could have done that. But that's not the story we were meant to see.
Well, and that's there's Qui-Gon Jinn was kind of in that flavor, and Obi-Wan even is like, Qui-Gon, why do you defy the council this way, and why do you?
A little more hippie,
because the more you look into the lore about Qui-Gon Jinn was like, look, the council is not as important as the Force itself.
There you go.
And the will of the Force and what the Force wants, and of course he was into prophecy and that kind of stuff. And I mean, Qui-Gon Jinn was one of the greatest Jedis, but he was not on the council. And there was a reason for that, because he was like, I'm not into all this. I want to I'm into the will of the Force.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of credence to what you're saying. And part of how they got, so regimented and stuff was that's why Ahsoka left the Order.
Yeah.
That's part of what, obviously, Anakin's fall to the dark side.
And I think Palpatine knew that to play that against them. That's their weakness.
Of course. And then that's what the dark side is about, is like, hey, you let your emotions fuel what you're doing. The Sith is like the complete opposite of that, where it's like, no, don't deny yourself, embrace it, and like let it out. And that's where your power comes from. And I think that's, you can say what you want about The Last Jedi, but that's one of the things I liked about Luke Skywalker's arc in The Last Jedi, was he basically tries to make that point to Rey, is he's like, don't you understand it was the Jedi's hubris that allowed Darth Sidious to rise, and the creation of Darth Vader, and, the light and the dark and balance. Like, you got to have kind of that in-between point. And so anyway, yeah.
Cool. All right, sorry. Side notes sometimes.
I love Star Wars, dude. I love talking about Star Wars.
I can talk about Star Wars for 2 more hours. So I think that's going to wrap up our conversation on the Clone Wars. It's hard to believe it's over, but it is completely wrapped up as of now. We are going to divert from Star Wars for a while. We've been on a lot of Star Wars kick over the last few months, starting with The Mandalorian, and then I talked about episodes 2 and 3 of the movies, and we talked about Rogue One, and then of course Clone Wars. So I think we're going to take a break from Star Wars stuff. We may get back into some more things. Although I don't know if you guys saw on Disney Plus the making of The Mandalorian just recently came out.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I want to watch that.
I haven't seen it. I'm excited. That's awesome.
It's pretty good.
I think I'm going to watch it this week. We don't have to make the episode next week because we just talked about how we've just been on a lot of Star Wars with Disney Plus, and there's lots of other things to talk about. So,
is it done documentary style like Tiger King?
I haven't watched it.
No. It's more of like a behind the scenes, something that you'd get. Yeah, but it's more fleshed out, because I mean they're doing it the same way where they release it week by week. Okay, and I think there's going to be 8 episodes. So. Okay. I think the first one was like 45 minutes, and the next one's 38 minutes. But it's basically just a behind the scenes view.
Dude, cool. Disney knows how their bread is buttered. Like they're going to keep the Star Wars stuff going if they can, even if it's.
I'm totally fine with that. I'm good with it.
So anyway, I think we're gonna just end the episode here. We usually talk about what else are you watching on Disney Plus and talk about what we're gonna talk about next. I think we'll maybe just get some ideas from the audience and kind of see what people want to hear about next. But we've got several ideas that we might cover, and I think we'll just talk about that off air. So Jake, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Before we sign off, though, can you tell people just give like a 2 or 3 minute pitch about PB&J?
Yeah.
And before you even say anything, I want people to know I've not been paid, under the table by Jake to say this, but PB&J is truly one of my favorite podcasts. I
you even have our bumper sticker on your car.
I'm a fan. I've listened to every single episode of the show. I really like it. I was actually just trying to get one of our friends the other day to tune in. I was trying to get more listeners for your show. So, but yeah, tell people about your show and why it's so awesome.
Yeah, my main podcast is called PB&J Politics with Brian and Jake, and it is a show rooted in civil political discussion. My co-host Brian has political views that are different from my own, and that's a good thing. So the show is where opposites come together and try to find some common ground on, or even if we can't do that, try to understand each other. We don't yell at each other. We're not, out to prove each other wrong or right. It's more just to hear each other out and try to understand each other's point of view. And we've been doing this show for about a year. We had to go to hiatus because of COVID-19. So we haven't had an episode in a while, but hopefully we'll be restarting up soon. But I'll tell you, I have learned so much, not just about some of the different topics that we've covered, but just about myself and, having some of my point of view and belief challenged by sitting across from somebody for, weeks over the course of a year and just hearing them out, like genuinely listening to somebody who shares a different point of view than me and saying, okay, this person is not the enemy. This person is not trying to destroy America. This person is not, we're not going to name call each other. And I've just really learned a lot about myself and had my views challenged in a good way. And so our listeners have kind of gone along the ride with us on, having both sides of an issue just really fleshed out. Brian is more of like a numbers guy, and so he'll come and be like, well, this many people think this in polling, and this number of things has affected, and this many things have been done because of this and whatever. And I'm more of the historical context, kind of person, and I'll go, well, historically, this is how this happened, and in the 60s, this is why this is the way it is now, and why, we haven't changed it or whatever. So him and I think we have this really good kind of mix of personality, and we're both goofy as all get out. So there's a lot of like really good, corny humor in there and stuff, and we try not to take it too seriously. It's a serious show. We talk about serious topics, but we try not to take ourselves too seriously during that, some of these pretty like heavy topics sometimes, that people really like get, passionate about. So we try to keep it light in that aspect. So yeah. Thanks for the time, Phil, to pitch the show.
Absolutely. And I'll say this about the show too, just to add on, like, and Jake knows this, but I am politics averse. Like I cannot stand to watch the news. So much of it is so biased for me, just depending on what channel you watch, that I see right through it, and it makes me really angry. And then if you try to find something that is a more of a balanced discussion of like, okay, let's invite someone from the right, let's invite someone from the left, they end up just screaming at each other for 30 minutes, and I just can't watch any of that stuff. And so for me, literally the only politics that I get is your show is because you guys are so civil. You laugh, you find things that are funny on both sides. You laugh at yourselves sometimes about some of the silly things that we believe in, and it has been an absolute refreshing take on politics for me.
Thanks,
so
man.
I really enjoy it. I tell everyone that I can about it.
It's a really balanced show, and then I like to rip off Fox News' saying for a long time, which they don't use this anymore for a lot of reasons. It's fair and balanced. But I think that PB&J is definitely the most fair and balanced political show you're literally ever going to listen to.
We try. That is absolutely our goal.
It's good.
Thank you.
Very educated. You guys don't, like I said, the screaming and yelling. Like, I don't know when in our culture that started. Like, I know people have had differing views for years and years and years. I mean, you can go back to the days of our founding fathers. They all disagreed, but they didn't They didn't all shoot each other. Now, I guess maybe
There was some.
Aaron
It
Burr
did
and-
happen. Yes, it did.
Aaron
happen.
Burr and Hamilton definitely shot at each other. So
I mean, we want our listeners to make up their own mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you come in and you've already got your own bias and you agree with Brian more than me or whatever,
Yeah, there's no-
that's really fine.
Right.
Like we're not. The goal is not to change your mind. The goal
Right.
is just to
Yeah.
hear out both points of view.
Right.
Yeah, and there's no winner. Like, it's not like, okay, well, Brian won this debate and Jake will win the next one or whatever. It's like,
Right.
there's no definitive answer at the end of the
No.
episodes, and I love that.
Now he has stopped me dead. I mean, there's been times where like I'm trying to prove a point, and he'll be like, "Well, then what about this?" And I'm like, "What? Well, you know, that's a really good point, Brian,
Yep.
and I'm going to have to rethink that because you
Yep.
just kind of like, and that's happened to both of us where we've really just gone, you know what? Okay.
You're right.
That's a fair point, and I'm gonna kind of have to rethink this, and I don't really have a good answer for you, and I'm not just gonna make crap up just to try to like prove a point or repeat
Yeah.
myself 100 times. Like if he has a good point that I haven't considered, then that's great. That's what we want, you know.
Yeah.
Trying to hear each other out.
Yeah, and you guys agree more than I would expect you to. Like
sure.
Especially on some of those finer details of some of the grander topics and stuff. You may vote completely different from each other, but
Yeah.
you don't disagree as much as.
And I think a lot of people agree. Like I feel like the majority of us all agree on an overwhelming amount of things.
Sure.
It's just there's some finite things that people like lose their brains over.
Well, and I'll tell you one question that doing the show has answered for me is, you know, you would think, how could somebody believe that way? How
Yeah,
could
dot, dot,
somebody
dot,
think
yeah.
that way? How could somebody vote that way? Don't they understand that, you know, it does this or this or... Well, now I understand how someone could believe that way.
Sure.
And usually it's not coming from a bad place.
Yeah.
Like they're coming from a good place, and I'm like, oh, like I still don't think that that's going to work, or I don't think that train of thought is going to lead where you think it's going to lead in practice.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand how you came to that conclusion, and I understand the place that you came from was a good place.
Yeah.
You're not evil just because you think
you're not a Sith
way.
just because.
right.
To tie this all
just
in.
because you want to embrace being able to have attachments doesn't mean
Yeah.
the Sith are evil.
Right. Or
They want order. That's what they want. All Palpatine
or world
wanted was peace and
domination,
order.
or galactic domination, for that matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're evil.
But there are people. Stormtroopers joined the Empire willingly. Most people forget
in
that.
some situations,
Yeah, not all.
but not in all.
The First Order had conscripts, but a lot of people. I mean, even Luke was like, "I want to go to the academy."
He didn't know any
Uncle
better.
Owen.
He didn't know any better. Biggs was Biggs his friend?
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah. Anyway,
The Womp Rats don't even know that they're being shot at. They don't understand what ships are. We've got to look out for these Womp Rats, Phil. All right, we'll take some calls now. Line 1 in Albuquerque. You're on. Timmy,
okay, Phil,
go.
rein this in.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode. We went super long, and I love that for this episode. This is an episode I've been anticipating for a long time. So yeah, good media episode for everyone. Tune in next week. We're going to talk about something not Star Wars. We'll figure that out as we go along. If you want to write the show, it's disneyplusreviews@hotmail.com. Let us know what you think about the Clone Wars or something that you've been watching on Disney Plus or what you want us to review on next week's episode. Just let us know, and we'll make you a part of the show. Thanks again to Jake for joining us. It was superb. This is
Loved it.
one of my favorite episodes we've ever done. So thank you so much, and we will see you next week.